Who we got on here? So Emily. Hi, Emily. You can just wave. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. Our typical, our normal regulars here. We got John. Hey, Lynette. How are you? You can just wave. Yeah, that's fine. No problem. Megan, good to see you. Awesome. Well, let me get a couple housekeeping things in. Oh, Brian. Welcome, Brian. Couple housekeeping things, and then we're going to get started with our interview here. So two things. One, our happy hour has been changed from Thursday till tomorrow. So it'll be tomorrow at 4 p.m. at the same link. So join us for happy hour tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And Jody is hosting that. And then stay tuned for our details on our Red Day pivot. I talked with Nick yesterday, and Nick is working with Tracy, who is on the call today. Good morning, Tracy. And we're going to be doing something. So details will be released hopefully tomorrow. We'll say tomorrow. That'll give us plenty enough time to get everything in order. So watch for that. We'll send out an email, put it on Facebook, the whole 9 yards. Okay, so with that said, we'll get started with our interview. And I'm super excited to have Hudson Warren on. Hudson, if you are, there you are, and you are unmuted.
I'm
so
here.
You're ready to go. This isn't your first day doing this, I see.
No, I've done about 375,000 Zooms in the past 4 weeks or so.
I
So
know,
it's been
right?
just Zoom-tastic, right?
Well, I appreciate you offering to join us, and obviously the agents are here. Some more are pile in the room. So I'm looking to bring as much value as possible, and I like you to share some of your story, and I'll kind of just give you a quick little intro, and then you can fill in the blanks. But so Hudson's been licensed since 2006. Started with KW. He sold 8 years in Southern California, and then he's been in Southwest Florida since 2014. What's important about that, everyone, and while we're talking and doing our interview, take some notes and ask questions. But Hudson has reinvented his business a couple times, and why that's important today is because with the shift that we're in and with COVID, some of you will have to reinvent by maybe starting over. Or if you're just getting started in the business and then this happened, it's going to put a little bit of a stunt, or it will feel like that. So he'll be able to share about how he's been able to overcome that. Also, Hudson runs a very lean and mean team. So that I think is very exciting to a lot of our agents, Hudson, because a lot of them want to create that smaller, high producing team versus the huge team that we tend to see in the spotlight quite a bit. So
Right.
If you could talk a little about that, but go ahead, fill in the blanks, and then we'll just kind of chit chat.
Awesome. Yeah. One thing before I forget, this has nothing to do with me. I think that if you're a new agent right now, please understand that I think what's happening right now is a gift to you, not the actual virus or anything. And yet the fact that you're starting off in such a challenging time, if you can simply make it through this next few months, year, whatever this is, however this lasts, if you can make it through that, like, you're golden. This is now a lifetime career for you. So just know that if you're newer right now, it's actually a fantastic time, in my opinion, to start. Because the people that get into the industry when it's really easy are the people who usually drop out of it when there is a shift. So, so just think about that. If I were new right now, I'd probably be freaking out. So I want you to hear something different, a different perspective. And so, yeah, I'll start with kind of my story and who I am, and I'll give you the Reader's Digest version as much as possible. So, as he said, I did start in Southern California back in '06. Which means I have been through like a big mega shift. And so I survived it, and I'm not that smart. So if I can survive it, you can too. So know that. I never really treated my business like a business when I was in California. I grew up around there, and I had lots of sphere. And if you've ever been, it's obviously such an overly populated and active place that just by the people that I know and doing open houses, I could always sell between 20 and 30 houses a year. And in California, now I wasn't selling in Beverly Hills, so it's not like I was selling $1 million properties. And yet, my average price point was like 4 something. So it was a really healthy average price. And that was great money when I was in my 20s and my early 30s. And so I never felt the need to push myself towards actually treating my business like a business. I worked like the typical realtor, and I just kind of got what I got, and that was fine. And then in 2014, I decided to throw all that away and go ahead and move across the country I moved for a long distance relationship. If you haven't done that before, be careful about that. It wasn't maybe the best choice I ever made, and yet it's brought me a lot of awesome things after the fact. And so I moved to a place where I had never been, and I didn't know anybody except the person that I had moved to be in a relationship with, and that person was in real estate, so they weren't really going to send me a lot of referrals. And so I had to really start bare bones, and the first few months I was there, I remember just spinning my wheels and going through all of the money that I had in the bank. And I had been with KW all that time, and I had avoided Bold. I hadn't taken Bold. And so in 2014, at the very end of the year, I was like, you know what, take my money. Like, it's all I got left at this point. Like, somebody's got to tell me how to actually sell a house without it being easy. And so I stepped into that room, and just everything in my life kind of changed through that process. So, I mean, the short version is, in 4.5 years, I took Bold 15 times. And going from zero, my first year I sold 25 homes. So I already did what took me 8 years to do in California. And by my third year in Florida, I was doing over 100 units. And it's because I kept going back, and I did what I was told. I decided to not know everything, and I did what I was told, and I kept myself in an environment that was growth minded. I mean, at a certain point, like 15 times, like, you don't go back and take the same class because you forgot what was in it. You go back because you've realized that you need to be in a coaching environment that's going to keep you on your toes and keep you headed in the right direction. And then from there, you take it 15 times, you also get tapped to become a coach. And so I became a Bold coach, and I did that truly because it had given me so much in my life. I mean, in that period, it's not just that I did that production and started to make a lot of money, that when I never thought I would make money like that before. It got me out of a very unhealthy relationship. It got me to a place where I was open to something different than that. And, you know, I'm now married, and I've got 3 kids, and I'm living, you know, you hear about living a life by design, and I really live that way. And even today, in these super fun, crazy times that we're in, that's shifted a little bit, and yet I'm still living that way because I'm set up to thrive no matter what. And so, yeah, I've had to reinvent myself a couple times. I just did it again really about a year ago, because when I got into coaching, that started to take the bulk of my time. And so I kind of let my business slip, and I got to a point where I figured, you know what, I'm not going to shut it down. I'm going to, you know, I had a business partner who had been with me for a couple of years at that point. I was like, you know what, let me let him sell, and yet I'll just kind of see what happens. Like, if it's not much, it's not much. And I kind of started to wind it down. And then my family and I actually decided to move again. So we moved about 2 hours north to Tampa, Florida, moved to a bigger city, just kind of more opportunities for the kids. And opportunity knocked again. And I had people that I had relationships with for years reach out and say, hey, you always talked about expanding the team. Are you still going to do that? And of course I said, you know, honestly, I'm kind of winding it down. I'm really focused on the coaching because that fills my bucket more than anything else. And yet I thought about it, and I slept about it, and I, you know, kind of agonized about it. And I realized that my vision all along was to expand my team and kind of slowly spread across Florida, and not do the whole ping pong across the country thing that a lot of expansion teams do, which, I mean, that's great for them. I figured, why not grow organically? We're a very transient state. People move around a lot. And so now I've just not too long ago delved into expansion. So I've kind of re-energized within my team. Good time right now, since I'm not traveling and teaching Bold, shocker. And so the team is up and running, and we're like doubling our numbers from last year. And I've got 2 expansion partners and more in the works. And so it's just been really exciting. Yeah, and that's kind of my story. So so from there, so I can stop babbling about myself, what other questions can I answer for you, Rob?
Well, let's go back to maybe your first year in Florida.
Yeah.
You move from California, you get to Florida, you're kind of starting over, new area, and you don't have a sphere of influence, correct?
Like 0. And I'm the first one that'll tell people, like, they're new to an area and they're like, I don't have a sphere. Well, call the people you know from where you're from. And it's not that I wasn't willing to do that. people don't move from Southern California to Southwest Florida. It's a very
Right.
sleepy little retirement area, and California is California. So there wasn't really a natural migration. So I didn't have any relevance here. Let's put it that way.
Right. Okay. So let's talk like actual activities, like on the boots or boots on the ground. What did you do to build your business that, I mean, we'll just call it your first year to 18 months. What was
Yeah.
the focus that you had?
So, I mean, I started with open houses because I knew open houses. And yet what I found in my area and, you know, your area, every area is going to be different. When I did an open house in Southern California, all I had to do was put a few signs out and I was always going to get 20 to 30 people. It's such a high traffic, high populated area that you're always going to get a lot of people, and it becomes shooting fish in a barrel. You can pick up a deal whenever you want. It's different in Southwest Florida, smaller area, quieter area, much older demographic. I mean, I was getting 2 or 3, I would put signs out for miles and get 2, 3, maybe 5 people. And that was super exciting. And so it just wasn't doing what it needed to do. And I was willing to do almost anything to avoid calling for sale by owners and expireds. And so what I first started doing was I started working other agents hard. What I realized is that I had been in the business a long time and I'd been with the same company, and I'd done well enough that I always went to family reunion and mega camp. I had a lot of contacts. And so I started working them because what I was seeing, at least in my area, was that Florida was really transient. There was a lot of movement. And so I figured, oh gosh, I mean, I see agents send referrals. I had done a few over the years. I'd really never done a lot of them. And yet I had done a few over the years. And so I started working agent referrals. And what happened there is that started my business to explode. And I still, it's honestly still one of the main pillars of my business. I treat agents as my farm. I mean, I do real estate for a living. I coach real estate for a living. I eat, breathe, and sleep real estate. I just enjoy talking to other realtors way too much. And so it was easier for me to choose to farm other realtors than to farm a neighborhood where I'm going to have to send out mailers constantly and spend tons of money. And so I started looking for agent referrals, and I started getting business that way. Then what I realized was that, okay, well, this is also kind of expensive because you're paying a referral fee every time. Grateful to do it. And yet, how do I get more organic business? And that's when I started making more, we'll call them cold calls. We'll call them what they are. And I started more with circle prospecting. I would call around just solds and just listeds, whether they were mine or not. I didn't really care. I just wanted to get people on the phone. And my little limiting belief at the time was, okay, well, if I'm circle prospecting, I know they're not getting tons of calls. So they're not going to yell at me. They're not going to be mean. They're not going to reject me. And if they happen to have a real estate need, they'll probably work with me. And I realized I was right. And yet the odds just weren't great, right? Because you're calling random strangers. Like, you have no idea if they've got a real estate need. You don't know if their husband or wife or cousin or best friend is a realtor. And so I got deals out of that. And yet it was so many contacts in order to get just one lead. And then of course, how many leads to get a deal? And that's when I finally decided to rip the Band-Aid off and, put on the big boy pants and start calling expireds and for sale by owners. And that's where my business really blew up, is really getting into that at a high level. And I always excelled better with expireds because they were quicker, and I'm definitely a high D and have no patience. And so, FSBOs were always a challenge for me because there was so much follow-up, and yet I did a few. And yet over those first, I would say it probably took me 9 months or so before I started doing that. And then I would say for about 2 years after that, that was a big part of my business, was the expireds. I don't really mess with them anymore because at some point I got smart and I started following up with the actual clients I had already earned and really started to focus on the repeat and referrals. So today, the 2 biggest pieces of business are repeat and referral clients and agent referrals. And then from there, it really goes to sign calls because we've built up a big enough business. And to me, sign call, internet call, all the same thing,
right?
That we always carry some listing inventory. And so that brings us deals. So that's kind of how it's evolved over time.
So and what I'm doing here, just so everyone kind of knows, is I'm looking at the room that we have today, Hudson, and that's what's going to kind of guide my questions so we can hit every different level that we have here watching. I want to make sure everyone gets value. So the people who are in the room now and they might not have that big sphere of influence, or they feel like they don't have that big sphere of influence.
Yeah.
calling fizzles and expireds, and I know just by looking at the participant list here, we've got a good handful of agents who do that. What would you say is the one thing that you did to be successful with your conversion on those expireds?
Definitely not taking the first no or the second or the third. Like, I mean, honestly, to me, it was always, all right, they're either setting an appointment or hanging up on me. Like, and it's really difficult to do that because, look, I'm not like that tough. Like, it's difficult to have somebody really give you a hard time, and yet you can turn it around. Like, you've got to, I think the big challenge is to not take no for an answer unless it's literally the final answer and they're off the phone. And also keeping your emotions in check on the call, because where I will hear so many agents mess up, and I did it at the beginning too, so no judgment, it's that they start combating and you go right with them rather than continuing to stay cool and just ask them questions, because you can diffuse. And I will tell you, your best, if you're going after expireds per se, like your best expired client is the one that yelled at you and you still converted into an appointment, because you've already kind of proven yourself to them that you can put up with a lot, and they're going to back down moving forward, at least in my experience. So yeah, just don't take no. Like, make it a game. Like, how many no's can you get until you get a yes? Or even if you get hung up on, who cares? Like, you still, if you ask for the appointment 7 times or something, whether you got it or not, you should end that phone call feeling like you won, because you didn't just chicken out. Because most agents don't even ask the question. They
Right.
just say, oh, you're not interested, okay. And then the agents that do ask for the appointment, most of us stop at one, you get one no and you move on, rather than just search for the actual objection or issue and handle it.
Right. Awesome. Okay, so you're building your business up, you're getting going, and you're picking up speed with this. And that first, you said your third year in Florida, you did 100 units.
I broke 100 units, 111, yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the path from, okay, I'm in Florida and I'm doing FSBOs, expireds, and open houses, and I'm starting to gain market share to that third year. So that wherever that gap is, can you talk about that for a minute on how you built up to the 100?
So the year before, I had done like 70, right around 70. And I did that pretty much alone. I had like a part-time assistant, and I just was ready to drive off a cliff. Like, honestly, like, it was too much work too much work for me. I think some people are built to just work all the time. I'm not. I very much enjoy working a 40-hour work week, and not that I'm doing that lately. And yet normally that's kind of my jam. And so I decided it was time to build a team. And of course, even though I had grown in a lot of ways and gotten out of my own way, I'm still a know-it-all at heart. And so I kind of did it the wrong way. And I hired a buyer's agent before I hired an assistant. And then I hired another agent. And then, like, I did it all out of order. And I will say, we got the production, and then it got weird after we got the production. So I definitely, I did a lot of things the wrong way. If I could go back again, it would have been absolutely assistant first, and a strong one, not like somebody who's just looking for a paycheck, like somebody who really had some experience and was willing to work the same way that we're willing to work and fight for a commission, and yet do it for a salary, because they exist. I mean, I have one now. I have a great one now. And then it was, the other thing that I would do is before I even hired an agent, and this is at that time, this is when I was doing a lot of expireds and FSBOs, I would have hired an ISA first. Because I could have, with the assistant, I could have handled the extra business. I didn't really need another agent, and yet it was just much easier to hire agents and give them a much bigger split and have them handle the business. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's what I would have changed. I would have really focused on leverage, like effective leverage, other than just, hey, yeah, come on, join me. Like, because that's kind of what it was. It was like, this is really exciting. This person's interested. Let me bring them on. I didn't vet them. Like, it got crazy, and then we dipped back the year after, and then the year after that we came back strong, and that was, and it was all, and at that point, when you're doing enough of that business, like, it obviously makes sense to have somebody working for you and have them on a salary, and it's no longer scary. And I made a key hire, and that's the person who he's my director of sales now. He started as my assistant. He had way more talent than he should have to have an assistant name. And so now he sells and he's my director of sales and he really drives the bus. And yet, yeah, at the beginning, it was me working all the time.
That story of hiring that first person and then them moving into that director of sales or whatever it is, the next level up is it's common when I'm talking to top producers that's kind of how that worked for them as they build out their team. And obviously, I mean, that's the model. That's how you're supposed to make that hire and then move them up and go from there. But when you were looking into hiring that person, because we've got quite a few agents who are at that level where they're like, I need to hire someone. I know I need to hire someone. They struggle with, number one, who to hire. So I'm glad you said it wasn't, just someone looking for a job, right? Because I've done that path too 4 times and ended up firing that person saying, I'm just not a good person for an assistant. I'm better on my own is what the story I told myself. But I think another roadblock that agents have is they feel like, I don't necessarily want to bring on this person because of, even if they're the right person, because of the financial commitment you're about to make. Because now I've got in most cases, I'm just going to, $40,000 to $50,000 a year person I have to pay for. Did that ever run through your head? And if it did, how did you overcome it?
It petrified me.
Sure.
I was pushed. I really attribute most of my success through being in bold coaching, which of course eventually led to getting into mastery coaching. I was pushed by my coach to do it. And not the first time. The first time I hired and I did it the wrong way, trust me, that was all me. And that was, let me hire someone part-time who's also willing to sell on the side so that I don't have to make a big financial commitment. And of course, you hire a discount, and I can tell you from experience, you get discount. And so not that you always have to pay top dollar, and yet you have to pay a reasonable salary and kind of commit to somebody full time. When I hired the guy who still works with me is Andy. When I hired him, he was somebody from my sphere. I will tell you, everybody that works with me now is somebody that I already knew before they worked for me, and it's working really well. So it's somebody I already knew at a high level. I chased him for a long time. He had his own business. He was in real estate photography. I knew he was getting burnt out and he was hitting a ceiling. He didn't want to have employees. And so there's only so many homes that you can take pictures of within a day, like you're human. And so he was hitting a plateau and he was getting bored. And it took me probably 4 months to convince him to do it. To come work with me. And by that time, that's when my business had started to go wonky from all of the wrong stuff that I had done. And when he finally agreed, I remember going to my coach and being like, I don't know how I'm going to pay him, because I really truly was down to very little money in the bank. And when we signed his contract, I didn't know how I was going to get him his first check. And I'm dead serious. And yet, lo and behold, I've never missed paying him. The first couple checks, it was literally like I was bringing my account almost to zero. And yet I did it. And making that hire and putting all the time up front to where I really was as confident as you could possibly be that it was the right hire was the smartest thing I've ever done within my business, because I'm also human and there's only so much that I can do in the hours of the day. And to have somebody else who has your same vision and who is bought on, like the power that brings, I feel like it almost more than doubles, because you kind of reverberate off each other. And so, yeah, it was having somebody who wasn't just like a random friend saying, yeah, go for it. Like somebody that I really trusted on a business level saying, no, like, having that person know my finances and know how dire it was and still say, no, you make this hire or else this is going to be how you run the rest of your life. Like, you're going to be constantly coming back to zero and to zero and to zero. You need somebody else. And they were right. And so that's kind of how I did that.
So you hire your full-time assistant, who eventually ends up working into a director of sales role. So let's move kind of down the road. And I know we're probably skipping a couple phases here, but I want to get to the to kind of like where you're at now. So you get to that, you're doing 100 transactions, over 100 transactions in your third year in Florida. And then you decided to, at what point did you decide to move to Tampa?
That was just last year.
Okay.
So it was just after it was a few months after I had started as a bold coach. And I really enjoy the coaching more than anything like that. Like, it's not about the money per se, like that's what actually gives me more enjoyment and fulfillment.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be a little more devoted to that. I also, if you remember the beginning of the story, I moved from Southern California, from like the LA area to Southwest Florida, where tumbleweeds were rolling through. And look, I mean, I'm older now and I'm married and I have kids, and yet I did miss being around some diversity and some culture and stuff like that. So I figured, okay, how do I not completely uproot our lives? How do we stay relatively close and yet move to a bigger city, more opportunities, better airport for travel, which of course is very ironic these days, and yet being a bold coach, kind of live on a plane. And so, yeah, so it was just last year. That's when we did that.
Okay, so now you've established a very successful business in Southwest Florida. What city were you in?
So I lived in Fort Myers.
Okay, so in Fort Myers, now you've established this amazing, successful business, and say, let me move a couple hours north, which you're still selling and you're doing Bold Coach at the same time at this point?
I wasn't when I moved. When I moved, I essentially went to that great hire that kind of had become my director of sales. And at that point, I mean, it's like, trust me, it's fun. Like, we had gotten rid of pretty much all of our agents. It was down to me and him and our one assistant. And that assistant, for the record, actually used to be my, not used to be, she was a client. And when we said we were looking, we reached out to our sphere first, and she said she was interested, and she had a much higher paying job. It was very odd. And yet, whatever, and that's been great. So it was just the three of us. And when I decided to move, I went to Andy, and I literally, again, I move fast and I'm a little ridiculous, and thank God that he trusts me. And I just said, hey, so we've been talking, we're going to move up to Tampa. We actually already found a house. We're gone in 30 days. You need to learn to sell property. Literally what I did. Because he had sold a couple homes a year, just passively, like to close friends. And I always let him do that. And it was literally gimme deals, though. It was people who just showed up to him. He had never had to go out and get business. He had never had to convert people he didn't know. And instead of saying, wow, I work for a lunatic, which I feel like most people would have done, he was like, no, you know what? We've really built something here. I'm invested. And again, here's the cool thing about leverage. And so no matter what level you're at, if you leverage smart, like, here's what happened with that. Our business has skyrocketed because guess what? He's actually much better than me. He's absolutely better than me, just naturally. And so all of a sudden, I mean, he literally, what does he close this year? So, because this was just October, FYI. So this was just back in October. And so far this year, I believe he's just shy of 50 closings.
Wow.
And he doesn't even know what he's doing yet. Like, he's literally like, he's just figuring it out as he goes. And yet, I think one thing that I instilled in him, because it's the way that I function at this point in my life, is that he doesn't have a lot of limiting beliefs. I told him he could do it. He believed he could do it, and now he's doing it. And his pipeline is ridiculous. And I think even with all of the craziness that's happening right now, I think he's going to have an amazing year, and he'll make 3 times the money that he made last year. So, and I continue to make money as well. And so it's just become this kind of beautiful win-win thing where the talent was there, we shifted what it was doing, and it's still working really well, if not better than it was before.
Wow, that's awesome. All right, so I want to ask you some business strategies that you guys are using in your business to bring in these transactions, yes. And then I want to pivot because I do want to ask you a little bit about Bold and the Bold pivot coming up since we got you here. But let's start marketing. You're running a business down in Fort Myers, and you got a business going in Tampa. You're doing Bold Coach. You only like to work 40 hours a week. So
yeah, not anymore. It doesn't happen. And yet, yeah.
Right. I feel you there. What types of things is your team focused on to bring in the business? What type of marketing and or prospecting do you guys focus on?
So we are focused 100% on referral business. Now that's split a little bit because we still do work agent referrals very hard. We'll probably close 60 or 70 this year. And then also past client referrals.
But hey, so you will close 60 or 70 agent referrals.
Agent referrals, yeah.
I just want to make sure everyone's writing down the right. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's a fantastic way to get business. That's a whole class on its own, to be quite frank. Again, it's my farm, if you want to look at it a different way. And it costs me almost no money. It costs me part of the commission, and yet that's that's a sales expense. That's not an upfront, like I'm paying Zillow $8 million a month in order to make $8,001 a month. Like, anyway, so yeah, so it's that. So our prospecting right now is just calling the people that we know. So, and I shouldn't say past clients because it's just database in general. So it's our sphere, it's our past clients, it's old leads that never went away and haven't walked us. Like, I mean, it's anybody who is in our database. Those are the people that we're focused on right now. And then agents as well. And yet I will say that the agent business is a little more like, that just kind of rolls on its own organically. It's the people outside of the industry that we're more focused on. And we're literally like, our life is so simple right now. What's happening right now is awful, right? Like people getting sick, people losing jobs, people passing away. Like there's no way to put a positive spin on that part of it. And yet there are byproducts that are positive. And I think the number one thing that I always hear, even before I was a coach, just most agents don't want to make calls. No matter, they don't want to call anybody. They don't want to call strangers. They definitely don't want to call people that they know because they feel like they're going to sound salesy and they don't like that. And of course, you did get into a sales industry just as an FYI, and yet I get it. I used to think that way too. The thing that you have to keep in mind right now is that all you have to do is just be nice to people and care about them. Like in today's climate, that's all you got to do. You don't need to call and say, hey, who do you know who's looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? You need to call everybody that you know, whether you've talked to them in a long time or not. Get over it. Like it's gonna be very hard for you to find somebody who's gonna scream at you because it's been too long. You just say, hey, sorry, it's been forever. These times it got me thinking differently. I'd really like to reconnect. Boom, you're done, and you move on. How are you doing? Like all you have to do is ask them how they're doing, and 90% of the time or better, after they tell you how they're doing, of course, they're gonna ask you how you're doing, and they're gonna ask you about real estate. And not because they necessarily have a need, yet they're going to ask because they think that right now the whole world is ending and real estate's definitely ending and nobody's bought a house in the last 60 days. And they think that the whole world has stopped when it comes to something like real estate, because who's going to make a giant financial investment or even sale right now in such uncertain times? And yet I'm sure there are people on this call, even with, I know you guys have some of the strictest guidelines, I'm sure there's people still doing business. There's people all around me still doing business. And so they bring up the topic and then you have the opportunity to control the conversation around it. And that's where we're having our wins, because we are finding people who do have an interest, or they have a friend who has an interest, or they're just genuinely curious, or whatever it is. And then we get to kind of flip the script on them and tell them what's truly happening and what the opportunities are and get them thinking in a different direction. So it's all about, what do you say to that potential seller, potential buyer, what have you, in order to get them off the fence. So do you want me to maybe talk about kind of what we're saying around that stuff? Like
that'd be great.
Working? Okay.
Yeah. And just so everyone knows, this is recorded. So if you don't have to write down everything he hit on his script, you can review the recording later.
Yeah. And I'm not even, look, I'm a coach by trade, and I don't sit here and read a script. Like I can't, it's not my thing. It's more about what's the message that you're giving. So keep that in mind too. Like you don't need to have a perfect polished thing to say. You need to know what you intend to say so that you stay on track. So some of the things that have been working with potential sellers right now, because anybody who's thinking of buying or selling right now, I feel like their first question to you as an agent is going to be like, gosh, is now a good time? It's really weird. You know, they're going to ask something along those lines. This is what I'm telling sellers. So for me, there's a few things. First of all, they have a captive audience right now. Like people are on their phone and computer and iPad and whatever. Like people are on their devices more than ever, and they're bored. I'm not bored. I'm working more than I ever had. And yet people who are literally not working or are used to going out all the time and they're stuck at home on the couch, whatever it is, like people are in front of their devices. And so you have a captive audience of people just loving to scroll through their phones. And HGTV would not be a phenomenon if people were not obsessed with real estate. And so you've got people that want to look. So you've got that going for you. The other thing is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, and yet your market was a very hot seller's market when all this happened, right?
Yep, correct.
Right. And you were probably, nobody knows when we're at the top of the market, your prices were high, right?
Yeah.
Like your prices are at a high. Okay.
Yep.
So the other thing that I'm telling them is, look, we don't know what's going to happen in the next months or year or whatever. And yet with everything going on, with the number of unemployment applications and all that, like there's a very good chance that prices will drop. Now they could drop slight, they could drop extreme. Here's the deal though, it is still a seller's market. The world has not stopped spinning. The need for real estate has not gone away. I mean, there's still babies born, there's still divorces, there's still deaths, there's still job transfers, there's still all of these reasons people move. If you want to capitalize on top dollar selling your home, I could be wrong and it could be worth more a year from now. And yet if we're looking at odds, I'd put it on the market now and ensure that you get top dollar for it. Excuse me. And then, so that's one thing. The other thing that I'm kind of going through with them, and these are all things like, I'm not like selling them snake oil. Like I believe this, like this is how I would advise myself. Like the other thing is I think there are so many, I've seen so many listings pulled from the market in our area. I would imagine you've seen some too. And then you've got a lot of people who are thinking of selling and are probably in a complete holding pattern. I think when all of this is over, and look, there's no light switch. Like this is not just going to be over because a state's governor says we're open back up. Like I think there's going to be a weird transition period. And yet when it's over-ish, what I think is going to happen is there is going to be an onslaught of listings that hit the market because of all the people that were waiting, the people that put it on hold. And we know that competition is not good for the market if you're a seller. And so, I mean, that's what I'm telling them too. I'm like, put it on the market now. Yeah, there's probably less buyers. They're more serious though. There's also less listings. And you're going to have so much competition, and let's be real, people are going to continue to lose their jobs over the next few months. You're probably going to have less of a buyer pool. Like I think it's going to get wonky, and it might be short term, and yet even short term is still a few months. And so, I mean, at what point, like, how long do you want to wait? If you still have a need to move or a desire to cash out on your property, like now's the time to do it. Now is the safe time. You have less competition. You have people staring at their devices, just waiting to see your pretty pictures. And I think now's the time. So that's been really working well for us because it's a different way of thinking, because they're assuming that nobody's buying. And I think you have to remind them. And I think quite frankly, for some of you, you might have to remind yourselves, like there are still people buying and selling. And as strict as your rules are in Michigan, there's still sales happening. Like I have a friend out of the Kalamazoo office, and she's killing it right now. She's put 16 deals under contract since the 20th. Now, who knows when they're going to close? Because I know you've got some, like, she's selling real estate. Like, yeah. There are still buyers out there. So you've got to make sure that your sellers understand that. You've also got to make sure that you understand that, and you don't think that there's nothing you can do right now. So that's kind of what's working with sellers. The conversation is a little bit different with buyers. So with buyers, what we're talking about are, you know, they want to know, right? Buyers want to buy at the low of the market, and they're thinking, okay, it's tough times, prices are probably going to go down. In the last 6 recessions as a country, only 2 of the 6 times have prices drastically dropped in housing. So just because we go into a recession, which I'm pretty sure it's a pretty official that we have been, that does not mean that the prices will drop. Now, I personally believe they probably will, and yet I don't think it's going to be extreme. And here's what we can say. The interest rates are fantastic right now. And that could change. Like they've been so low for so long, and yeah, they've fluctuated. I mean, there's going to be a point, and especially now money is getting tighter and tighter. Like the banks are going to have to start charging real interest rates again at some point. And if these things go up even 1%, well, they've lost 10% of their buying power. And I don't think that the properties are going to drop 10% right away. No. So I think it's reminding them of what we can't crystal ball it. We can go off history and we can look at what we have now. And what we have now are really good rates. We have probably some sellers who are a little more willing to be negotiable. And especially if you've been in a seller's market, you know, that's great news to a buyer. Like you've got people who are probably a little more willing to put themselves out there and maybe pay some closing costs, or maybe take a little bit off of the listing price, or maybe give them a longer close if they want some flexibility there. And so I think that's the important thing. And then my number one question to a buyer right now, and of course the trick here is that you have to not be tied to the outcome of this question, is just to ask them how long they see themselves in the house. Because if they tell me 3 years or more, and just so you know, and don't tell yourself a different story, I mean, the statistic from last year, because they track it every year, people are staying in their homes on average 10 years. So most people are going to tell you 3 years or more. Then I'm just going to simply tell them, well, then why would you not buy? You still have to pay for a place to live. Even if you lost your job, even if you're just leasing, it's still going to mess up your credit. You still owe the money. Like you're under the gun no matter what. You're going to pay for a place to live no matter what. And, I remind them of what I saw and kind of scratched my head at back in the 2000s was when everything started to drop. I saw so many people short sale their homes that had no reason to. Like, they could afford the payment, they were happy in the home, and yet they saw the values dropping and they freaked out. Why did they do that? If they would have just held on to it like they planned on anyways, the values came back.
Right.
And they always come back if you look historically. So if they're going to be there 3 years or more, I feel like it's a very safe bet that at the worst case scenario, if they had to sell, they're going to break even. And then who cares? Because you still had a place to live. You don't get anything when you get rid of a rental. If they say less than that, then you know what? I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say, look, I don't know if it's the right time for you then. And the thing you have to remember then is that you might talk yourself out of a sale. And yet that person, when you put somebody before your bank account, and especially in our industry where we already kind of have a negative reputation, let's be real, we get lumped in with car salesmen and people like that. And so I think that it's important you realize that that will come back to you. And I don't mean like in a karmic way. I mean, literally that person will use you when it is time. That person will tell anybody that they speak to who has a real estate need, you got to talk to so-and-so because you know what? They actually told me not to buy. They were confident enough to tell me it wasn't the time to buy. So I really trust them. So, I think it's just asking that question and properly advising them.
Yeah, I love that advice. I've been doing this about 18 years now, and I've always put the client first, and it's always come back around. Literally, like you said, they've come back and said, "Hey, you told me not to do this then, and now I am ready now, and I appreciate the honesty." So that's great advice.
And now's the time to do that. Like that's, and sorry, really, if there is ever a time to put the clients first, like all you need to be doing is caring for people right now. Like what an awesome thing. Like you do not need to be salesy. Your wishes have been granted. All you need to do is care for people right now. And the business will show up as long as you also know how to talk about real estate at a decent level.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Okay. So a couple of takeaways that I have here, and then I want to talk to you about Bold for a minute.
Awesome.
So I just want to recap here what I've written down. So the one thing you did early in your career is move past no. Don't take no that first time, second time, or third time. Just understand no means not yet. The pivotal part for your business was you hired that right person and got that admin into place, and the leverage was super important for you. And you guys run a referral business, which I'll say, 10 years ago, interviewing top agents, it wasn't referral and repeat. And it's totally shifted. I mean, I can't remember in the recent, probably at least year or two, a top producer I've talked to, even in our market center, every month we go over our top 10, and I'll ask some of the people in our top 10, what was that, where'd the business come from? And it's been repeat referral SOI every time. So awesome information there. I do want to talk about Bold a little bit since you are a coach, and we've got this Bold pivot coming up. There's a lot of questions. I've got some questions. I've taken Bold 4 times in the past 3 years. Loved it. Taken it as an agent, and as leadership. So the questions I have is we're doing this pivot, and it's all going to be online. And people are like, well, they're either, I love Bold. How is this going to be different? Because I really like the original Bold. And then I've got people who are, I hated Bold because the cheering and the standing up and the fouls and all that stuff. So what is going to be different? So can you maybe give us kind of a rundown from what you know on how this new Bold pivot is going to be ran? Because as I understand it from my growth call yesterday, there's like 20,000 plus people signed up. So the momentum is huge and the excitement is there. But for anyone who's kind of wondering.
So everybody, there's no fouls, just FYI. So like, there's no fouls. We can't, even if we wanted to, we can't police that many people. That's insane. Right. Like we're used to having 100 people in a room. Like so we can't do it. And so you're out of fouls. So congratulations. And the other thing that I'll say, anybody who is like, I don't like Bold, I don't like the rah rah and all that, like that's legitimately gone. So Bold was rewritten about a year ago, if you guys have been around the company long enough. And so a lot of that, there's still a lot of mindset, but there's a difference between mindset and, stand up chant, like that stuff is gone. Like the fluff is gone. And again, in an electronic space, in a digital space, we're not going to be able to do that type of stuff anyways. So that you can get over. You don't need to worry about that. For the people who love the class and are wondering what's different, so it's still going to be very much like Bold 2.0. Look, we're going to focus on mindset. We have to, right now, we have to focus on mindset, whether you'd like to hear that or not. I don't care. And some of you, I'm sure, are actually in a great space and staying really positive. We are so subject to negativity right now. Everywhere we look, like, I mean, literally, I'll be channel surfing before bed at the end of the night. And I don't care if you put on the most ridiculous sitcom of all time, like every ad is about coronavirus. Every ad is like we're stuck around negativity. And I think specifically, like you guys, Pennsylvania has got rules just like yours. Like, I think even more importantly, people like you guys need to be in there just to, again, to keep this in check, because 90% of our success comes from mindset. Like, it's been proven so many times. And so of course it's going to be based there. We're going to talk a lot about best practices that are relatable specifically to the time that we're in. So for instance, like, what are the best practices for your database right now? Because if you haven't adjusted the message that you're sending to your clients right now, you are definitely missing the boat. And there's a judgment there, and yet let's fix it. Let's redirect. And so what are the best practices for now? Because even though I think a lot of us feel like this might go away in the near future, I think a lot of what's happening right now will stay with us. I think a lot of our business will change somewhat digital, and that's a gift. Like, if you haven't done a digital buyer presentation yet, it's fantastic. Like, there was no reason for us to be meeting in person. We weren't looking at houses. Like, so there's a lot of things that will stay. And I think that if you look around the world, a lot of countries are having a second wave of this. I mean, I don't think we're going to be in isolation for the next 6 months. And yet I think we could come in and out. Like, we need to prepare for this. We need to prepare for the worst, and then of course, hope for the best. And so what are the best practices there? What are the right messages and dialogues and scripts to be using right now? Because I think most of the agents, I'm talking to so many agents that are crushing it right now, and yet I'm talking to way more agents that are doing just about nothing. And for the most part, it's not a laziness issue or an unwilling to work issue. It's just literally that they don't know what to do. And so instead they're doing nothing. And so that's horrible, because there's so much opportunity right now. The market share that you pick up during a shift is market share that you'll never lose. So it's important that we're working at a high level right now. Even if you feel like you can't put things under contract, you can still be laying a foundation and building a pipeline. And so what are the right things to say on the phone? What are the right things to say over text and social media? Like, all of that is going to change. And I feel like if you guys know what to say, you'll actually take more action. The other thing that's then super different is that we're going to dive into your expenses at a high level. Now is the time, whether you've got tons of money in the bank and you're not worried or not, it's still a very smart time for us to learn to live on less and to learn how to trim the fat on our expenses. And it's most people's not favorite subject. Like, nobody gets super excited talking about budgeting or pouring through your finances and looking at all the money you spend on things that maybe you don't need to. And so we're going to do our best to help you. We're going to give you more of a system on how to do that and some tips and tricks so that you can just quickly start saving money every month. And look, if your business never goes down and you continue to make the same or more money, well, great. Then all you have is more money to invest, to help a neighbor, a friend, somebody who's suffering at a higher level, who's like lost their job. So we're going to help you with your expenses and living on less. And then it's really going to be focused on doubling down on leads. And I know that that's scary to people. And I've had so many people quip right back at me and be like, so wait, what? I can't lead gen 4 hours a day. Okay, well, so first of all, you could, and I'm not saying you have to. The point is, we want to give you guys systems, and we want to make you more efficient and effective in today's type of prospecting. And we're also going to give you some ways that you can continue to build your database at a high level, even if you can't get physically in front of people. Because that's the other challenge right now. You run through your database, and then who else do you call? Like, you can't go do an open house. You can't go walk through Home Depot and introduce yourself to people. Like, you can't do that right now. And yet there are still ways to grow your database. And so we're going to give you some best practices and some strategies on how to do that. So those are kind of the things that are going to be different. And then the other big difference, and to me, this is like the biggest win, is that, first of all, any Bold product ever since 2009, which, by the way, if you do the year math, the Bold was created out of the last shift. Like, Bold was what kind of propelled this company into first place in the last shift. And then it was $799. It's always been $799, which I paid 15 times happily. The way it grew my business and my personal successes was well worth it. This class is $99. And I know that, I know that money is probably tight for a lot of you. I get it, or it's getting tight and you're worried about it. For $99, like, how could you, and if you actually like buy in, like, if you don't attend the classes, well then that's different. If you're willing to attend the classes and put in some work and change the way you look at things, just on any level, like, this is not about like take every bit of information and implement it. This is go attend the class, take what you want from it. Like, how could you not possibly get some extra deals? And even if you just got one, like for $99, and there's 8 coaches delivering the content instead of 1. There are an additional, we're not even sure how many because we need to see where the registration stop. There's an additional however many coaches that are going to run the coaches corner, which is, so there's 2 days a week, 2 hours a day of live stream content. So Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 4 p.m. your time zone. There's a live stream. It's going to be recorded. So if that doesn't work because you're all of a sudden a homeschooler and that's when you're doing math or algebra or whatever, you can go back. Everything is going to be recorded. And then on Wednesdays and Fridays in that same time slot is an optional session called Coach's Corner that's going to be a little more interactive, where you can bring questions, script and role play, mastermind, kind of just work with other coaches. And then everything is being run through a special Facebook group that's just for this class. It's not like the big bold group. That's the other cool thing. The coaches, we have shifts, like 2-hour shifts that we're watching that Facebook group from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday. So it's also like on-demand coaching for your business. And it starts the minute you sign up. It doesn't start May 5th. Like, we've been monitoring it for weeks already. So when you sign up for the class, like, you can go and ask a question. And as long as it's not some bizarre middle of the night time, within a couple of minutes, you're going to get an answer from one of the coaches, if not multiple coaches. You're also probably going to get answers from other people. And sometimes their answers might even be better. Because you got to realize the people that are in that group are the people who are interested in growing and learning and thinking differently. And so all of that, to me, all of that for $99 as opposed to $799, like, I literally don't understand why we don't have 100,000 agents enrolled, to be quite frank, because we've never had a value like that before. And I certainly hope there's never another occurrence that we have to have a value like that before. This is just a way that the company has really stepped up to provide extra value for you guys. There's still a cost. And I can tell you from experience, you have to have some skin in the game. Like, that's part of the reason that one-on-one coaching works. You have the people who think, oh my gosh, $1,000 a month, that's terrifying. And I was like that too. And then as soon as I got into it, I realized, man, even if I don't talk to my coach for $1,000 a month, I'm willing to work harder because I just feel like I have to. Like, I've invested that money, now I have to. That's why a lot of times we don't award full scholarships for Bold. We usually do half, because if you're going to grow, you've got to feel that burn. It's like if you had a personal trainer and they only charged you $5 a session, you'd probably flake on a lot of sessions. If they're charging you $50 a session, you're showing up even when you don't want to. And that's the idea here. So what other questions can I answer? Yeah.
I mean, it's a tremendous value. I just did some quick math. If you take advantage of all the sessions, including the Coach's Corner, it comes out to about $6 an hour is what you're paying. And if you have a MAPS coach, one-on-one MAPS coach, you're paying them $250 for the same, hourly rate. So that's amazing. I'm sorry, no, MAPS coaching is $500 an hour, not $250. So
I was gonna say, I think it's $500 an hour.
Yeah, it's $500 an hour. So that's crazy. This is exactly what I think people need right now. And to be able to deliver this on such a large scale is going to be pretty incredible. Like a tip of the hat to Bold and the coaches, all of you who have been able to put this together so quickly and have this type of program available to us.
We're in a fluid world.
we are.
And the one last thing that I'd like to share, and then you can kind of wrap up. And then when you're talking, I'm going to type in the website you go to sign up. I'm going to type in my contact information, and please hear me. I don't know, I can't see if I know any of you on this call. I've been Zooming all day. I'm here to help, whether you sign up for the class or not. I'm giving you my cell phone and my email address, not just to look nice. If you reach out to me, I will answer you. I will answer questions about the class. I will help you if you've got a struggle in your business. Like, that's where I get reward from, is helping people, because Coaches have helped me see things in myself that I couldn't previously see, and therefore I'm living a really amazing life that I never thought I would. And yet, the last thought I want to leave you is for $99, if this is all you get at all, for a month, your mind's going to be in a good place. And I think May is probably going to be our weirdest month. I really do, because I think some states are opening, some states are not. Some counties will probably open, some counties won't. People will leave their house. People will not be comfortable leaving their house. I think it's going to be so much confusion. And then we've been in it for so long. I think it's, not to paint a negative picture, I just think it's going to be worse before it gets better. And so you're going to be in a positive, growth-minded environment for $99 for 4 weeks. The other thing is that you're going to commit to working on your business for 4 hours a week for 4 weeks, or maybe 8 hours a week if you participate in the coach's corner. Like, that's the pitfall, guys. We're so focused on working in our business. Like, hey, that appraisal's due. Hey, I got to call this person back. Hey, I'm so worried about this one deal. And then you put nothing else under contract, and then you're tied to one deal. Like, this is where you actually work on growing your business and growing yourself. That alone, even if you take nothing else out of it, you never use a script, you never do anything else. Like, to me, for $99, like, that was worth it. Even if I wasn't a coach. I mean, that's the way that I look at it. So I'm going to type in the website here. What I'd like to ask all of you to do is that if you're planning to sign up for the class, first of all, like, do it now or within the next few minutes, because you'll forget, because most of you are probably like other realtors and have this thing that I call squirrel disease. And we get easily distracted, and we're running at such a high speed all the time that we just forget. Like, we just forget. And yet I'll give you that website. Go ahead and go to the chat box and just type "I'm in." Because then, Rob, you'll have a list, and in a couple of days, you can maybe check in with them and make sure that they did sign up. And if they haven't, then there's that little reminder for them. So go ahead and just type "I'm in" if you're planning on joining. And then I'm going to start typing this stuff if you want to fill in the void.
Yeah, no problem. Well, we want to help support this as well. I know I'm signed up for Bold, and quite a few of our agents have already signed up. But I want to give away, I told you guys I would give away let me pull up the gallery view here, a paid registration. So I want to do that now. And let me see, okay, the person. So what we want to do is we want to award the people who have already invested in themselves. And so on my second monitor over here, which you can't see, I've got a spreadsheet of everybody who's attended everything since this whole thing started. Our lovely Jessica has tracked every single class. Literally, she goes in and writes down all of your names on every class we've done, and we're tracking it here. So I'm going to give to our number one agent who has attended almost everything, Phil Ledoux. You are getting a paid Bold registration on the Market Center. So I'm going to write your name down here, and we will register you for that. So congratulations to Phil.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And then Hudson, why don't we give out another one? Do you guys want me to do another one? If you do, just put a thumbs up. If you don't, put a thumbs down.
Wouldn't it be funny if they said no? That'd be really weird to me.
Well, I was going to give them an opportunity. I didn't think they would, but everyone's putting thumbs up. Okay, we're going to do another one. So Hudson, I'm going to need your help on this. Can you give me a number between, I won't make it hard on you. Between 1 and 50.
Sure. 37.
37.
Oh, I probably shouldn't have said it out loud, should I have? Or is that?
No, it's fine, because they can't see what I'm looking at here.
Obviously. 37. Okay, cool.
Give me, it is Taylor Johnson. Taylor Johnson, you also get a paid Bold registration on the Market Center. So congratulations, Taylor and Phil, so far. This is kind of fun. Want to do one more?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, one more, Hudson. Give me another number between 1 and 50, and it can't be 37.
Okay, 23.
23. It is, hang on a second. David Fisher. David Fisher, you also get a paid Bold registration. So there we go.
Awesome.
3 paid Bold registrations. We've got the people in the list here who said they're in. Yep, Taylor says she's in. And we will we'll get you guys registered for that. And Hudson, thank you so much for sharing an hour of. I know you're busy, so I appreciate that. And
It's
your
all
story.
good. It's my pleasure.
It was definitely helpful. I think we got a lot of value out of it, and sharing what's happening with Bold. So thanks again. If you guys have any questions for Hudson, his information's in the chat box. Feel free to reach out to him. Thanks again.
Awesome. Have a great day, guys. Thank you so much.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Hudson.
All right, guys, we have, so congratulations to those people. Jess, if you want to stop this recording, and then we'll give a couple